Perfect.
Okay, it's in studio.
The stream has started. Our audio is going out to everybody. Hi, everybody. We're training someone new. Enjoy. That'll be fun. So you're going to run input 8 and then input 1 when it's done.
That's our show for tonight, everybody. Hope you enjoyed all the calls. I know I did. That one caller was crazy as shit, yo.
You're good. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm still getting my voice like coming in on my ear.
You're hearing yourself echo back?
Yes.
And when did that start?
Back when I told you the first time.
Oh, I thought that was just because of the open mics. Shit. Well, we're on air, so I'm going to I'm going to work on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Jason, why don't you tell people about yourself if you don't have an echo?
Let's see. Okay, no, mine sounded good. It's just John's problem. So my name is Jason. I'm the host of the Dragons and Genesis podcast, a monthly secular Bible study show that leans pretty heavy into comparative mythology. And what makes my show unique is that I don't shy away from any of the awkward portions of the Bible. So things like people having sex with angels or using foreskins as currency to buy people, those are all things that get covered on my show. We also do a lot with like Bible monsters and stuff like that, and occasionally dive into some of the related texts, like the Book of Enoch, for instance. So that's who I am. That's what I do.
Awesome. Well, thank you for filling that in. I actually had like apparently another window open that had the show going, so that was totally my fault. I'm fucking up like normal and choking like an adult. All right. Welcome, everyone. You're watching SkepTalk on the line, and it's November 6th, 2023, and the lines are open if you want to call us to talk about like history of the Bible and stuff. Or whether or not God exists, any of that kind of stuff. We're here to answer your questions or talk to you about any kind of ideas that you might have. So call in with a question or an argument about the history of the Bible, whether or not the Bible's historically reliable or anything like that. The number is 720-619-2288. If you are calling from the U.S. or if you'd like to call from the web, you can find that link down in the description. Jason's already introduced himself. How you doing there, Jason?
I'm good. I just ate some amazing food that someone who looks incredible in this house cooked. It was me. But I recently switched jobs. I'd been working as a truck driver for the last 13 years, and that required me to be clean shaven in case I needed to like go into a refinery and stuff, because a lot of those require that, so you can wear a respirator in case the place blows up or has a chemical leak or whatever. But I recently got out of the truck about 2 months ago, so I don't have to shave anymore, which is, kind of obvious. I also have a lot more free time, which I'm spending most of working on the podcast. So, Yeah, that's fun. Lots of extra reading and research. So I'm learning a lot about Bible monsters right now.
Oh, really? That's pretty cool. Like, you're talking about like Behemoth and stuff?
Uh, Behemoth, the Z's, which is like a giant chicken, um, Leviathan, all the different things that went into making Satan, the strange entities that later got turned into angels, like the seraphim and cherubim and things like that. A bunch of the different Near Eastern gods that are running around the Bible doing all sorts of things. Like they usually get translated as like pestilence and destruction and famine and ruin and death and all sorts of things like that. A lot of those were actually like Syrian gods and stuff, and they basically were part of like Yahweh's entourage. Anytime he wanted to go and like really screw over a bunch of people, he would show up with these guys, and they would like throw flaming arrows at people, or send disease out and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, all kind of cool stuff like that.
Oh, that sounds pretty awesome. I mean, my wife and I, we do our own Bible study, but it's just literally just reading what's in the book. And there, on occasion, I can throw in my little 2 cents there about what I've learned, in some of the more deep, I guess, New Testament kind of studies and Old Testament biblical studies. But that sounds amazing. Now, is there I know that there's some talk of a unicorn in the Bible. Do you talk about that?
I have covered that. I don't think I actually touched on that in my show, but I've been a guest on some other people's shows, and I talked about that, I believe, on the Blurry Photos podcast a bit. That actually is like a weird translation issue. So there's not actually unicorns in there. Now, if you read certain versions, especially the King James, you're going to find, I think, about 14 mentions of unicorns. But what it was, when these guys were translating this thing, they were trying to figure out what to put there because they weren't familiar with the creature being described. So they were like, okay, well, it's like really cool and it has horns. So, well, we know about unicorns. Maybe that's it. And so they just wrote in unicorn. Satyrs also get tossed into the Bible because of this same issue. So they do this, and what it actually was originally was a thing called the reem. It's a kaiju cow. There was like two of them, a male and female. And at birth, they're separated. The male goes east and the female goes west, and then they graze at the farthest edges of the world, out near where the firmament comes down and touches. And then when they get near the end of their life, they come together and they mate, and then they die. Or the male dies, and the female gives birth to a male and female calf, and then she dies. And then those two are instantly separated. And the reason is because if they stayed together long enough to keep reproducing, their weight would become so great it would break the world. And like the big stone pillars that hold up the earth would crack, and the whole thing would just, crumble down. And that, I don't think anybody wants that. So, so yeah, that's what the reem, that's what it's referencing. But these guys, they didn't know what that was, and they were like, I don't know what a reem is. Like, it's got horns. Okay, unicorn. And so when they say that Yahweh is as powerful as the reem or as powerful as a unicorn, they mean a cow that's so big it's like the size of mountains. There's actually this story in one of these apocryphal books where King David, he's like somewhere to the east of Jerusalem, and he's like climbing up this mountain range, and he gets to the top, and he realizes he's on the back of a sleeping reem, and he like, I think, slides down the other side or something. But yeah, so that's what this is. It's a kaiju cow, and it's not even the only kaiju cow in the Bible. Yeah, it's a kaiju cow.
I could just imagine. I could just imagine it now. Godzilla versus cow.
Yeah. So There's a reason my logo is like Godzilla attacking Jerusalem, because there's kaiju in the Bible. You just have to know where to look and how to look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, anybody in the comments there, we got a poll question up. Do you believe in any creatures widely considered myths like unicorns, Bigfoot, chupacabra? Which there are some interpretations. I think I can't remember if it was Jehovah's Witnesses or maybe Mormons or something, but they consider Esau to be Bigfoot walking around or something like that. I know. But if y'all have any kind of like y'all want to defend God's existence or Jesus's existence, because both Jason and I are that's correct, right? You're a mythicist too.
Yeah,
Would you consider yourself a mythicist?
I'd say I'm only about 10 to 20% convinced that the man Jesus, as a first century cult leader who inspired the religion that would become Christianity, I'm only about 10 to 20% convinced that the guy existed. So I'm mostly leaning toward it's just an evolution of older mythology. And even if he did exist, what we have left is myth. So if it turned out tomorrow that we find really good evidence that shows like, here's the guy, I'd be like, that's awesome. But I kind of don't care, because the myths that are, like surrounding this character and where they came from, that's the thing that really fascinates me.
Yeah.
I really don't care, but yeah, I'm not really convinced that he existed. He could have, but it's a really tentative case in my opinion.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I put myself in the 33% or the 1 in 3 chance that he could have existed, which I believe is what Richard Carrier's minimal mythicism kind of comes to the conclusion on. So, if anybody's out there has any questions about that, please do call in. The number is 720-619-2288. You can call in. You can ask us questions. You can present evidence to sway us in this position. I would be very interested to see if anybody could call in and get either Jason or I to move on this question of whether or not Jesus existed. Because I know that there's a lot of people out there with a lot of fervent opinions about this topic. But we do have somebody already waiting on the line. So, Jason, Are you ready to get to some calls?
Absolutely.
All right. So we're going to take Jay. There we go. There he is. Hey, Jay, how you doing?
Hello, I'm doing all right.
Good. So, what question, or it says you want to discuss some claims made in your religious school. What claims are those?
Okay, so in my Bible class, we go over some stuff, and there's some of it that like particularly sticks out to me as odd. There was a conversation that I had. So last time I was on 2 weeks ago, I listed out a bunch of different topics from that class. And one of the, there's a conversation that I had with my teacher of that class about one of the topics that I brought up last time I called in. And then there's some more topics too. And I was thinking that I could just let y'all know some of the different topics that I have written down here, and you can just choose the ones that you'd like to talk about, and we can go from there.
Okay.
So should I read them out now?
Oh yeah, go right ahead. We're waiting.
Okay, so the conversation that I had with my teacher was around a question that we had on a test in that class that was like, once you reject absolute moral standards, you must accept which of the following statements. And then it was a multiple choice question, and the possible answers were: killing innocents is always wrong, God exists, the Nazi Holocaust was not objectively wrong, A and B, or none of the above. And the correct answer, according to that teacher, was that the Nazi Holocaust was not objectively wrong. And so I had a whole conversation with him about it that I took pretty extensive notes on. But he also said that children inherit sin, and that he used his 3-year-old grandson as an example about it. Then there's like being ignorant about the Bible is to miss the whole point of life itself. There was an article that said something really weird about what deconstruction is. Then there is something about like even if you don't believe in the Bible is going to make you, reading the Bible is going to make you an even moral person. And then also, apparently, according to him, the Bible is the only book that requires cross-examination and study into what you believe.
Okay. Jason, did any of those topics really sound off for you?
Man, that's a fun little collection. First, I would agree that, at least to some degree, that you really should be studying your Bible, because reading and comprehending and studying and cross-examining a Bible is repeatedly listed as the number one reason that people leave their religion. And not just the Bible, but with every religion, with Islam, with Hinduism, with Jainism. You read the holy books, you tend to end up falling out of belief. So yeah, definitely cross-examine that thing. Do a lot of study. Grab a really good commentary to read alongside your Bible. But I'd like that objective morality one, where you've got to be, you have to embrace this objective morality that I'm sure comes from Yahweh, and if you don't, then you could end up doing all of these horrible things, especially because things like the Holocaust, we have numerous examples of those things being portrayed as good and righteous things in the Bible. I mean, like the book is filled with them. So I'm not sure how that person would defend that. How, butchering, tens of thousands of people because one person did something wrong is considered objectively moral. And there's countless examples of that.
His point with the question was that if you reject absolute morality, then you have to accept that the Nazi Holocaust was not objectively wrong.
Well, so Jay, I'm kind of curious. What do you think of that particular statement? Like, how do you feel about that idea?
Personally, I think it's entirely ridiculous, because I think that for the most part, like, the Bible does a lot of like promoting different genocides of different people, and there's like a lot of killing in the Bible, and there's like even so there people who believe in absolute morality coming from God tend to neglect the fact that God often like tells his people to go out and kill people. And so if it was objectively wrong to kill people in every single circumstance, then that would mean God is contradicting his own character by telling his followers to kill people.
Yeah. Typically, like, there's a lot of different ways in which you could go through this. And I think that you got some really great points there. Which I know that you said that you talked to him afterwards about this, right? And you took a lot of notes. Mm-hmm. But typically the route that I go is that, I tend to, as I interact with this question more, I tend to see it as, those that are godless or without God, and those that use God as their moral foundation, they're both using what I guess you could call subjective morality in this sense. It's just that the religious people, they just subjectively choose this standard in this book that they subjectively cultivate in order to build this foundation, whereas atheists or non-religious people, we just have to figure stuff out for ourselves. Like we don't have a book that we can go to and we can pick and choose and everything like that. So I think that pointing out how it's still subjective, like you're still choosing to subjectively follow these rules. I that's one route that I generally go. I think that pointing out genocides is a good route. Typically I will mention specific verses, and like at this point I've got them like memorized, like Numbers 31 17 to 18 is one particular one that's pretty bad. 1 Samuel 15 1 through 3 is bad. Deuteronomy 20 is bad. Leviticus 25 44 through 46 that has your God condoning and mandating chattel slavery. And so the question becomes, like, if God is this ultimate arbiter of truth, then that must mean that these things are good. At least there's some rationale for chattel slavery and genocide, which kind of flies in face of what they choose the answer to be of, Hitler did nothing wrong or something like that, that was on there, which I hopefully won't get demonetized for that. But, that whole kind of idea there, it really is in conflict. So I'm glad that you have a pretty good foundation, like on that particular topic there.
Yeah. I did bring up to him in the discussion that I was kind of getting tripped up on the word absolute morality, because like absolute implies that those rules apply to every single situation. But like you could call it objective, since according to him it's coming, like that morality is coming from God himself. But the word absolute is making God contradict himself, because those rules don't apply to every single situation. So even in objective morality, there's no absolute morality. And so I tried talking to him about it, and he didn't even like answer me on why he was saying absolute morality instead of objective morality. And he didn't even contradict himself. He just changed topics after a little while.
Yeah, dodging is the best tool in an apologist belt. Just dodging the question and trying to control the conversation so that they can talk about what they want to talk about and spin things in the way that they want to spin things, is what I've found. So as let's see, there was objective morality, so we kind of covered that one. Another one in there was just reading the Bible is going to make you a good person. Is that right?
Yeah, the quote that I'm looking at is, even if you don't believe the Bible and you read it, you're going to be a more moral person. Because in class we were going over different notes that we have, and it was like, let's see, the topic of the class was 4 compelling reasons for why we should study the Bible. And one of those reasons was knowledge of the Bible is the mark of a moral person. And so he was saying that, like, even if you don't read the Bible, like, even if you don't believe the Bible, if you read the Bible, that will make you a more moral person.
What do you think about that, Jason?
I think the overwhelmingly Christian prison population might throw a little wrench into that idea. But, or the fact that societies that are predominantly non-believers tend to be more peaceful and less violent might throw another wrench into the idea. But I think, that what this person is missing is the overwhelming evidence to the contrary. I mean, the more devout a person is, the more easily they can justify doing horrible things, especially if they're basing their ideas off of a book as atrocious as the Bible. Because, this book its pages are dripping with blood. It's an absolute horror fest, and like it shouldn't be read to children. It's absolutely atrocious. And look at the behavior of the people who are extremely religious. They're horrible people, and they know their Bible, and they can quote their Bible. They read it constantly, and they're even other religious people point to them and say that they're not good people. I mean, look at Westboro Baptist Church. These are despicable human beings, and nothing they do is, flies in the face of their religion. Like, they are embracing the ideas in that book. And it seems like the people who are religious and moral are those who are moral in spite of their scripture, not because of it. So that idea just doesn't fly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say that a good real world example you could use that contradicts this entire idea that your teacher's putting forth is one, the Catholic Church. They have done some pretty evil shit over countless centuries, and then you've also got the Southern what was it called, SBL, Southern Baptist League. They recently did a sexual assault and rape investigation of all of the churches that are in their little league there, and there's a prevalent problem. So it's not just like a Catholic organization issue. It's also it's also a Protestant issue. And there's the Jehovah's Witnesses. It seems like they're Mormons too. I don't want to forget about how shitty the Mormons are about this as well. So it kind of seems like all the major denominations of Christianity has some problem with, sexual assault and raping people. And so this whole concept of just read the Bible and you'll be a better person. It's like, well, that doesn't explain why the priests in the Catholic Church, the pastors and preachers in all the other major denominations of Christianity, why are they so horrible but they get forgiven by God? And this kind of plays into the whole morality thing, because at least in Protestant Christianity, some branches, I guess, of Protestant Christianity, your morality doesn't actually matter. Like when it comes, because the ultimate goal is to get to heaven, right? And pass the pearly gates and, get Jesus's, club stamp on the hand to get in. And the only thing that Jesus requires in some of these branches, not all branches, obviously, but in some of these branches, is just to believe in Jesus, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And you're not getting judged by your moral actions, so it really doesn't matter if you're a good and moral person or anything like that, as far as religion and Christianity goes. So it really kind of in that particular perspective, which I'm not exactly sure what denomination your religious school is, but this whole notion of, oh, you'll be a good moral person, I don't know how that makes sense on this particular religious worldview, because it just simply doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a good and moral person.
Right. And that's the whole moral of the story of Abraham. Obedience comes before morality. You have to be willing to sacrifice your own children if it means being obedient to the voices in your head or to the prophet or pastor or whomever. Serving Yahweh, it trumps everything, including basic human decency. So morality is very much secondary in this particular belief system.
Yeah. So I just want to clear up like something. I go to a private Christian school that claims to be multi-denominational, but they mostly teach like conservative Baptist stuff. And this class that I'm talking about, my Bible class, it's an apologetics class, and I am being made to take it. I would not be taking this class if I had any say in the matter, because I think it's absolutely ridiculous. But because it's the school I go to, I kind of have to take it if I want to graduate. Yeah.
Well, you do get like a
Yeah.
behind the scenes look at all of the little tricks and methods that people use to basically trick people into believing something for which they have no evidence. So I mean, taking an apologetics class, make the best of it. Learn what you can about the tools and methods that are used, and you can always use that for the other side going forward.
Yeah, one of the most
Yeah.
common pushbacks that I get is this idea that atheists either don't know the Bible or don't know the arguments or anything like that. So, I mean, taking this in as like learning, it's almost like if you were going to prepare for a debate or at least to challenge these kind of ideas, you need to at least know exactly what they're claiming in order to be able to like have the discussion. And so I would take it as that. I know that you probably can't change like your situation about going to a private religious school. So I would probably, I mean, if it were me, not trying to tell you what to do or anything, but if it were me, I would take it as like sort of opposition research, I guess. But again, that's just, if it were me, that's probably how I would view it. But well, Jay,
Yeah.
it was awesome talking to you. Do you have any final thoughts or anything like that before we let you go?
Yeah, I've been just as a little positive note, since I started going to the school in 9th grade, I've been able to correct a lot of misconceptions that I've been hearing, and I've been able to do my best to challenge a lot of things that that my classmates are being taught in school. And I've been really doing a lot of independent study to make sure that I develop my critical thinking skills as best as possible. But I've met quite a surprising amount of people who go to my same school who think similarly to me, who aren't satisfied with the way that stuff at my school is being taught. So there is hope for the next generation, although it is very rough.
No, yeah, I totally get that. Well, Jay, more power to you being in that religious school. I hate that you're having to be there, but I hope that you have a great night, and just keep on asking those kinds of questions, and don't let them stomp that out of you. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Have a great night.
All right. Thanks, Jay. You too. Bye.
Good night.
All right. Well, we do have a theist caller that's coming up, but I do want to just promo real quick. We do have a Patreon, here for the line. It's patreon.com/call the line. If you want to help support the work that we're doing here by interacting with the greater public on these kinds of questions, then you can go there and you can support us, and that'll really help us out because we don't want to sell the channel to like Donald Trump or something. Nobody wants to do that. But we also have multiple shows that are going to be coming up this week. Tomorrow, it seems, on Tuesday, we've got the Sometimes Show with Jimmy. And then also on Tuesday, that's at 2 p.m. And then at 6 p.m., there's Dying Out Loud. And then Wednesday, we've got The Hang Up with Matt. And then on Thursday, it's Takis with Arden and Katie. And then on Thursday, there's a Sometimes show at 5 p.m., right after Takis over on Jimmy's channel. So we've got a lot of great stuff coming up for y'all this week. So I hope that you guys will tune in then. You ready to get to the next caller there, Jason?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right. Just to remind everybody, it is Connor coming up, but you can call the line at 720-619-2288 if you have a problem with anything that we're talking about here tonight. If you think objective or absolute morality exists, please do call in. We'd love to have a conversation with you about it. So now we've got Connor on the line. How you doing there, Connor?
Hello? Hello? Am I on here? Am I on here? Help.
Yeah.
We hear you.
We got you, Connor.
All right, cool. I was getting myself echoed back to me. I was hearing my own voice. It was kind of crazy, man.
Okay. Are you good now?
Yeah, I'm good.
What you got for us, Connor?
What's going on? Well, I mean, this kind of referred to the title of the stream. I feel it's a little misleading to say that the Bible is made of a myth, because there's actually quite a bit of prophecies that have been fulfilled that I can prove to you.
Okay, so right from the get-go, though, I just want to lay this out, and I'll let Jason, if Jason has any problems with this, I'll let him talk. But so, like prophecies are going to be the least likely thing to actually be like true. I mean, if you look in the past, any prophecy that has come true has either just been reading the room of the situation, like the political and socio-economic situation, or it's been just so generalized, like, Nostradamus stuff, that you can literally make it fit anything. So, I mean, prophecies, as far as the Bible goes, is not going to be the best route to go, especially when you consider the fact that later writers, like New Testament or even in the Old Testament, they had access to the previous writings. So, I mean, they could have just fabricated stuff to make it fit. Even if the stories seem to indicate, oh, yes, this fulfilled this prophecy, that seems like a more likely path to go down as far as all this goes. So, I don't know. Jason, what do you think about prophecies proving the Bible?
One thing that we need to remember when we're talking about prophecy, especially within the biblical context, is that the majority of the prophetic works, especially like in your Old Testament, the majority of those things, they're written and it's transpired. They're talking about these things as if it's a future event, but they have like anachronisms and things like that in them, or they're really good at getting the details right as long as it's, within a generation or two of the time that it was written. If they try to talk about something that happened further back in the past, they get it wrong. And when they try to talk about something that was written, that's going to occur in the author's actual future, not the, pretended author's future, then they get that incredibly wrong. I mean, there's prophecies in there about how, like, I think like the city of Tyre is going to be completely demolished and everything by the Babylonians. And then they have to come back and update it when it doesn't happen. And the Babylonians fail to take the city. And they're like, okay, well, I guess like after the prophecy, Yahweh kind of changed his mind and they're not going to take it. So they get things like that wrong. And then you have even more fun ones like the book of Ezekiel. The whole thing is this prophecy, written by Ezekiel right before the Babylonian conquest, in which Jerusalem gets destroyed. Only repeatedly throughout the book, it talks about how the author is in Babylon after the exile has already begun and Jerusalem has already fallen. Like, he's writing about the past, and like they're not even good at hiding it. They don't even really try in Ezekiel, but in others they do try, and they occasionally slip up, and they have times where they accidentally mention a present day event to clue you in that this is something that is being written decades or even centuries after the events they portray, and even more centuries after it's supposedly written. So yeah, prophecy's not really going to convince me, because I read these things and they're not assembled very well. They keep accidentally tipping their hand and showing you that these are things that were being written long after the fact, not far before the fact. And then when it comes to the New Testament, they keep taking things that weren't prophecy and then turning them into, like, twisting them around and making new little stories out of them, and then being like, as fulfillment of the prophecy. And it's like, well, first, it had nothing to do with this event. Second, it's about someone else entirely. Third, you're taking it completely out of context. And fourth, using an old book as inspiration doesn't mean that old book was prophetic. It means you're reworking an old story. It's, it'd be like saying that,
Okay,
John Wick is fulfillment of the prophecy of the Count of Monte Cristo.
Hold on.
Well, first of all, Connor, you don't tell us to stop. No, Connor, I'm going to mute you. No, Connor, you're muted. Okay. First of all, don't. This is our call-in show. You don't start and tell us to stop and interrupt us. Okay. This is a conversation. Wait for us to stop talking, and then you can start. Okay. So, I mean, that was very rude of you right there at the end of what Jason was saying there. So I'm going to unmute you now, and you can talk, but just keep that in mind in the future. Okay. All right. You're unmuted.
Okay, how much did you hear what I said?
I didn't hear a fucking thing that you said. Well, I didn't hear a fucking thing that you said because I was trying to get you to stop talking.
Okay, now I can continue to talk. We are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will turn him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified. Is that not Jesus predicting his own death?
It's really funny. In Harry Potter, I do believe Harry Potter was maybe not Harry Potter predicted his own death, but it was definitely foreshadowed in the movie. So, that you understand that this is all happening within the same story. And just because Jesus is like, oh, I'm, going to be killed, that's called foreshadowing.
Yeah. And we're talking about things that are written, at the end of the first century. We're talking about people. Let's just take the Gospel of Mark, for instance, because that's sort of ground zero. Matthew's based on Mark, Luke is based on Mark and Matthew, and John is the Michael Bay version. But we're talking about a gospel that's written after the fall of Jerusalem. So this is post 70 CE. So we're talking about a person who wouldn't have even been alive during the time of Jesus. And he gets the geography all wrong. He's leaning heavily on the Iliad and the Odyssey for material. He's never been, this anonymous author, we don't know who wrote this, had never been to Palestine. If he had, he couldn't have made the mistakes that he made. He invents an entire inland sea just so he can have these sprawling sea adventures, so they can have a 10-hour crossing on this tiny little lake that you can paddle your little boat across in 90 minutes. And it's storm ravaged and there's shipwrecks everywhere and stuff. And then a century later, people had to try to attach this fictional body of water to a real place. So they said, let's take Lake Kinneret and rename it Sea of Galilee so that Mark doesn't look like a complete idiot. So when this person, or any of these authors, because they're making up a lot of stuff, and we know that they're making up stuff. When they're putting stuff like that in there, these are Greek adventure novels. They were originally written in Greek, most of them written by people who weren't familiar with the geography. They completely make up laws and customs and all sorts of other things. And they're fashioning a story. That's why it's all written in a third person omniscient, writings like they literally know what people who are over there are thinking, like these are novels. And so if something appears in a novel and then later the thing happens, that doesn't mean that this real person really existed and they really predicted this thing. It means that the author was foreshadowing it to build dramatic tension. I mean, we don't, look at, stuff in The Lord of the Rings and be like, man, you know what? Tolkien was a prophet. I know he was just a good writer. And the biblical authors, most of them were really good writers, especially in the Gospels. It was fantastic literature, but it wasn't prophecy,
Also, if I can ask you, Connor.
Religion. I mean, you guys just want to smash religion. You want to destroy religion. You don't.
No. Stop. I'm going to stop you right there because that is nobody's thing
I
here.
actually muted him.
Stop.
I muted him because if chat's to be, and usually when this many people say the same thing, it's usually correct. The guy is apparently just winding up to start using the N-word.
Oh.
This is it. There's a guy who calls in to yell slurs at the end, and literally, you guys just explained to him why it's not impressive that a story that was written after has a person predicting his own death. And he goes, you guys just want to bash religion. So the conversation itself has no value, but apparently this guy comes to call in shows just to get all worked up and then start screaming slurs. So you can unmute him if you like, but I'm muting you to let you know that that's enough people have said it that in the past that usually means it's that person. Well, that's fine.
The joy of religion.
He called him with his real phone number.
Remember, reading the Bible makes you more moral.
Obviously.
Apologists have said that, and Connor has proven it.
I'm going to call his mom. Yep. I'm going to call his mom and send him the notes. Send her the call. He called him with his real phone number. I'm calling his mom.
Well, I'm so sorry about that, everybody. I should not have unmuted him. I did not expect him to start coming in with that. But
you gave him too much credit, man. Like you've got far too much faith in humanity. You got to come over here where I am. And I'm just like, oh, it's going to be horrible. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah. But anyways, so Connor's a shithead. And we ban shitheads here. But anyways, so I one thing that I was going to bring up just now is he talked about how Jesus predicted his stuff, predicted his death and everything like that. Well, I mean, if we were going to use that as a gauge for whether or not the Bible is mythical or if it's historical. Or fulfilling prophecies or anything like that, I would point to the story of Oedipus, Oedipus the king. So he learned from the oracle of Delphi that he was destined to marry his mother and kill his father. And of course, what happens in the story, he ends up fucking his mother after he killed his father. And so if that's the mark of the Bible being true, that Jesus predicted his own death, then I guess Oedipus was a real person that had his death predicted to him, and Oedipus is just a historical document. And
that means that Zeus and Aphrodite and Hephaestus, those are all real deities, but because his death was predicted and then it came true. So.
Mm-hmm.
And if you disagree with that, you just want to destroy religion.
I agree. We just want to destroy religion, y'all, not just critically examine it. We want to destroy religion. I don't take him as a serious person. But in any case, we do have like all the lines open. So if y'all want to call in, y'all got any problems with the whole myth kind of thing, about the Bible, please call in for that, because we have a lot of between Jason and I, we've done a lot of material on exactly how bullshit it is that the Bible's considered like a historical document. We were talking about, Jason was talking about how, Mark's kind of the start of the Gospels, and everything else is kind of based off of him. And, John's the Michael Bay. I actually like that description. John's the Michael Bay Gospel. But for me,
when the
actually,
lens flares kick in, that's how you know that it was Michael Bay that wrote it.
Yeah. But for me, the thing that it kind of really all gets back to me for is Paul, because Mark heavily uses a lot of Paul's theology. And so in my opinion, and I don't know how you feel about this, Jason, but in my opinion, the only evidence we have for anybody that was named Jesus that collected people, a group of people, and then was killed by somebody, is Paul's work. And Paul is very vague about all of that. And there's just no way that we can use Paul as far as Paul as we have him now. There could be some future discovery that, has Paul being more direct. But right now, we just don't have any good, clear evidence from Paul that Jesus was ever a historical person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's actually... and I need to see if I can find it. There's this amazing quote by a Christian scholar who actually talks about that. What is it? You know what? Actually, I think I have it on my phone. It's this brilliant woman named Margaret Barker. And she has this amazing quote about the problem with Paul. At the center of Paul's preaching, there is not the teacher from Galilee, but the Redeemer from heaven. Why? Indeed, from this letter, one would have to conclude that the Jesus, who was only a teacher from Galilee, disappeared from the tradition at a very early date. So early that one wonders if it was ever there at all. And this is, I believe she's a Methodist minister in the UK. And she's I think she used to teach maybe at Cambridge. This one, she's brilliant. Her books are incredible. Some of them can give you a migraine just trying to keep up with all of the different details that she juggles so easily. So even Christian scholars have pointed out the problems with the earliest Christian writings, that they are already, within just a couple decades, heavily mythologized. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of don't care if there was a guy, because the myths, all the different like angel theology and stuff like that gets wrapped up into it is, to me, so much more fascinating than, any human from Galilee ever could be.
Yeah, honestly, I find that the most interesting aspect of like researching all this biblical history with the New Testament and everything like that is that these beliefs that the early Jews had, because it was a diverse set of beliefs, and I mean, we have some of this reflected in like Paul's work, because Paul identifies Eden. Like, everybody thinks Eden was on earth, but to the early, the group of Jews that Paul was running around with and everything, Eden was actually co-located in the third heaven. And, he actually recalls, somebody, he says somebody, I don't know if it was him or somebody else, but somebody being called up by God to the third heaven, and, seeing Eden and all that kind of stuff. And, he perceives all these things. And so, like, a lot of people get very confused about what Paul's actual view of Jesus is. And this is something that even Bart Ehrman's come around on recently in his How Jesus Became God, I believe, that, and he claims that this is like his most fringe position that he holds or whatever, but that, Paul actually considers Jesus pre his ministry to be an angelic figure in Jewish theology. Like, Paul considered him to be that way. And so it's like, if Paul was considering him that way, then there were plenty of other Jews that considered him to like pre-exist and be an angelic being. And we even see other Jews like Philo of Alexandria. He also, identifies this angelic archangel that, kind of is described in the exact same ways that Paul describes Jesus. And so we have multiple lines that corroborate this whole thing. But the early beliefs of the Jews are just a fascinating thing. More fascinating than whether or not Jesus existed, I guess. But I think that it's just fascinating what they used to think about.
Yeah, the most fun I've ever had on my podcast. I'd been doing a bunch of stuff in, I think, like Samuel and Kings, maybe, and I got kind of burnt out. So I decided to take a detour, and I put it up as a poll asking my listeners what they thought I should cover, Scientology or Enoch. And it started off as a pretty close race, and then it leaned, the poll leaned pretty heavily into Enoch. So I stepped away and I did I think like a 7-part series covering the entirety of First Enoch, every single chapter. I think it's episodes 48 to 54. It's easy to find because all the episode titles are like references to popular songs. And this thing, like, I go into like all the crazy belief systems that are wrapped up in this book, and it's a shame that it isn't more well known and better studied, because Enoch is an amazing book. And there's some really crazy stuff in there. You're talking about like this whole like Son of Man archangel thing. There's actually a section in there in which Enoch, this whole thing is like talking about the Son of Man and all the stuff he's going to do, how he's going to sit up in heaven and keep track of everyone's deeds and be part of like the heavenly courtroom and all of that. And he's going to sit in judgment over humans and angels and all the rest of it. And then at the end of this section, this angel pops up and he melts Enoch's skin, and Enoch transforms into an angel, and he finally realizes that he's the Son of Man. And it's like what did I just read? And it's this like absolute craziness. But then when you read it, you realize you're like, I'm seeing like the origins of Christianity in documents like this, which Enoch was heavily influential on New Testament writers. They repeatedly cite Enoch in their work. And seeing that, it's like these were Jews writing this, it was really fascinating stuff reading these things.
Yeah. So we just put up a new poll. Is the Bible a historical document? 10% or 12%, sorry, of people, it keeps going back and forth, but a number of people say, yes, it is a historical document. We'd really love if you could call in and actually try to defend that position. Hopefully you have some actual evidence to support that position, that it's a historical document, like as in it comports with history. So, if you feel that way, please do call in. We'd love to talk to you about it. I would love to be swayed on this particular position, like, of whether or not it records any kind of historical information. Because I've heard from people and seen videos, on YouTube where they claim to have so many different historical facts about Jesus. And, none of them seem to pan out, and they all seem to depend on fabricated documentation. Like I personally consider like the Q document, and they've come up with actually the M document, which is the Matthew stuff, and then the L document, which is the Luke stuff. And then they also say that John is completely independent from the other Gospels. Now, Jason, I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel like fabricating documentation, fabricating independence there is just not the way to actually make a good argument.
Yeah. When it comes to these hypothetical documents, these things are They are documents that are imagined into existence because people don't want to admit that Luke had a copy of Matthew. And they're like, oh, well, the reason why he got all of these sayings that Matthew also had that neither of them got from Mark is because they were both working from a collection of proverbs that could be traced back to the historical Jesus. And there are so many problems with that line of thinking. Like, we have a whole book of proverbs in the Bible. It's called Proverbs. And it's a collection of a whole bunch of different books of proverbs that were all stuffed together. And then someone decided, you know what? I guess Solomon wrote this because he was really smart because, the Bible said so. These things are kind of smart. So the smart guy must have said them. It's like the thing where they attribute the quote about the bees to Albert Einstein. I remember reading that when it was like a chain email and it was like a Native American proverb, I've seen it attributed to so many different things, and really someone just wanted to attribute it to someone. And they're like, oh, who's a smart person? Einstein is smart. Like, what did Einstein care about bees or hive collapse, which wasn't even a thing when he was alive? Or I'm sure it was a thing, but it wasn't a widely known phenomenon. So, like, he wouldn't have even heard of it. But so you got this Q document. It's this collection of proverbs. Okay, people have collections of proverbs all the time. It's a whole genre of literature. You go around, you collect things that people say, and you write them down. And then at some point, you take credit for all of them. Benjamin Franklin did it. So you've got that. So it doesn't need to be traced back to any historical person. Usually they're not. Actually, pretty much, they're almost never attributed to one or they never come from one person, unless you're Oscar Wilde. And then you've got, the idea that they both had to have a copy of this, and that's how they got all these sayings that came from Jesus. But they have other instances, like where there's a line that Mark wrote, and then Matthew adds a few words to the end of it. So this isn't Q material. This is Mark material. And Matthew extends the sentence, and then Luke has the exact same sentence with the exact same extension in the exact same place. That is Luke plagiarizing Matthew. And if he can copy one sentence from Matthew, he can copy anything from Matthew because he has a copy of Matthew. And if he has a copy of Matthew, you don't need to fabricate, or you don't need to imagine hypothetical collections of proverbs attributed to anybody to explain the fact that Luke is copying Matthew. And so Q just goes right out the window. And it's the same with all the other hypothetical documents. They're just trying to come up with as many different ways to link these authors to Jesus as possible, to the point that they're literally just making stuff up. And like Mark Goodacre absolutely demolishes the ideas of these things. Like, he demonstrates that Luke is copying from Matthew in so many places that have nothing to do with this Q material. And then John does the same thing. He's literally taking people like the whole thing with Lazarus. He's taking a character from, I believe, Luke, and he's a fictional character in a parable that Jesus tells, and he's turning him into a real person. And he's taking the whole moral of the story and flipping it on its head. He's doing these clever little inversions. How did he do that if he wasn't aware of Luke? He's taking something Luke made up and flipping it over, but it's completely independent. Like, I'd love to see someone defend that. Or I've seen people do it. They've never done it well.
Yeah. A good example of that is actually the two different Lazaruses we have. Because in Luke, we have a Lazarus that's actually a parable that Jesus tells. And then John reifies this Lazarus into history by making him a resurrected person. And so it's very clear that John knew about that Lazarus, and he was like, nah, man, this is what really happened.
Yeah. Because in Luke, he doesn't resurrect because even a resurrection wouldn't turn people to Jesus. And in John, he's a real person who does resurrect, and resurrecting does turn people to Jesus. And so, yeah, he's taking the story and he's flipping it over to make a different point. But yeah, it's like he's borrowing from Luke. It's plain and simple. But yeah, people want them to somehow be like independent eyewitnesses, which they don't even claim. Though you can make a case that John is claiming that his source of information is Lazarus. I've seen people actually see that like there's basically stuff in that gospel that hint that basically the author is saying that his source of information is this resurrected man who's telling him all this. None of these are eyewitnesses or anything.
Yeah, because John identifies the source as being the beloved or the disciple that Jesus loved, and the only person that he says that about is Lazarus. So that's why why it says that.
It's a phrase like it pops up again.
Yeah. We do have a couple of calls, but the lines are still open. You guys can call at, I believe I'm going to get this number memorized, 720-619-2288 if you want to talk about, anything, whether or not God exists. There are horrible arguments for God out there, but we would love to be swayed from that position, so please do call in. Next up on the line is Noel. Hey there, Noel. How you doing? God damn it.
Connor.
Yep, that was Connor. Anybody behind the scenes, can you block that number from Noel? I wanted
a number.
Huh?
That was a new number.
Yeah, I know.
It's just
Sorry
a person
about that.
who's literally like, my life is miserable. I'm a whiny little bitch. I don't have any real power to actually affect any change. My family doesn't love me. I don't have any friends. Every relationship I have crumbles and burns because I'm a manipulative asshole. I don't respect anybody. I try to complain about other people just want to rip down. You just want to tear down religion, when in reality, like, what is it you want to do? You want to have a single genuine connection in your life, and you never have, and you never will. You'll die alone, but at least you'll have said some slurs on a YouTube channel that are just going to get cut out after the fact. What a miserable, whiny little person. I'm sorry your penis sucks. Stop taking it out on everyone else.
I always love Jimmy when he tears somebody down like that. All right. Hopefully this is not also Connor, but we also have Robert. Sounds like a more genuine question. Hey there, Robert. How you doing?
Hi, yes. Hi,
not
Connor.
Connor.
Can you hear me okay? Not Connor. Fuck Connor. I hope that's okay to say.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yes. Fuck Connor. Everybody in the chat. Fuck Connor.
Yeah. So I have like a ongoing discussion with my brother and several Christian friends, and I'm recently deconverted. I'm still not, I have a hard time calling myself an atheist, but what I guess I'm getting at is they consistently bring up that if you're not a Christian, you can't truly love like correctly. And one of my friends really went hard on that just the other day, and she wrote my friend wrote a post saying essentially the world is just on a definition of love that is actually hatred for people's eternal well-being and a rejection of truth. So I know there's a lot of claims being made there, but I guess I'm trying to figure out ways to appeal to like her reason, trying to just be like, hey, just because you think that you have this considerable opinion about your version of love, like where you think it's like the business, like how does that make sense Like I basically want to try to argue with with this from a logical standpoint, but I just don't know. I don't know if I have the right words. I would love to hear what y'all have to say about that, or if I explained it okay.
What do you think there, Jason?
Don't try to explain it. Explaining, an emotional concept like that, I don't think it's really possible. Don't try to explain it. Instead, prove the person wrong. Show your friend that you love people, that you are capable of love. Show your friend that you love them. Be the kind of person that your friend needs, and just be a good person. Love people, express that love, and people will eventually see it. I've experienced this exact same thing where family members were, once they found out that I was no longer a believer, they had those same objections. How can you possibly love a person? And it took time, but now they don't question it. They know for a fact that I love them because there's simply too much evidence for them to deny, and those opinions just don't exist anymore. So don't try to explain it. Don't try to convince them. Just show them.
My question is, what is it even like? I guess I'm having trouble even understanding the question about what does it mean that you can't love correctly without believing in God? Like, considering that love and those kind of emotions are chemical reactions that go on in your brain, and everybody expresses their love for another person differently. So I guess I don't. I'm having trouble processing the entire concept. You can't love properly without believing in God. But what does it mean to love properly? If it's anything that the Catholic Church does, that's not proper in any kind of fucking way. So, I mean, when I look at the religious community and what they call love, I see some people that, properly, I guess, express love, at least by my own standard of what it means to love somebody. I feel like there can't, like, you can be religious and love someone. I'm not I'm not saying that if you're religious you can't love someone properly, but it's very obvious that religion provides a shield for those that are looking to abuse other people and disguise it as love. I mean, the entire Bible is a toxic relationship between God and humanity. I mean, the Bible is if you want a good how-to book on how to be the shittiest partner in anything, read the Bible and do what God does, because the Old Testament is the guide to how to be a shitty fucking person in general, and God being the main antagonist in this toxic relationship in the Bible. I mean, I don't understand the concept of properly loving somebody without God. So did she give you any kind of indication as to what it means to properly love somebody?
Yeah. I mean, I think that and this is something that my brother has said too, but like being like truly loving somebody is you have to be concerned about whether they're going to heaven or hell if you are truly loving somebody. That's, again, context that's, I have based off of previous conversations or whatnot, but the idea is, yeah, if I don't care about if someone's going to hell or not, then I don't love them. is the really short way of phrasing it.
Is it not part of the Christian theology that, like, nobody knows how God is going to judge someone? Like, the judgment is reserved for God, and so, like, you don't know how somebody's going to be judged. So I don't see how fruitful it is to be concerned about going to heaven or hell. But also, I'll say that the whole concept of hell in the first place is a syncretism with other faiths prior that existed prior to Christianity and alongside Judaism. You have a lot of like the whole idea of like a burning hell and Satan and everything like that. That's got a lot of roots in like Zoroastrianism. And, if I don't believe in Christianity, I definitely do not give any fucks about Zoroastrianism. And so my point is I don't know how any of this factors into like loving somebody. I feel like loving somebody can be shown through your actions and through your words, but it's more concerned about, caring for an individual. And I guess you could lump, are you going to heaven or hell, into caring for another individual. But I feel like it's really pointless considering that you don't know God's mind and you don't know how God's going to judge them. So it kind of seems like it's, a thing that you just can't know. So why waste the mental effort and energy on caring about that? So I don't know. That would be my response, I guess, to anybody that tells me proper love is caring about whether or not someone's going to burn for eternity. Like I feel like it's just something you can't know, so there's no point in like worrying about it.
Yeah, thanks, John. I totally agree with everything you said there, and I think hell is. I mean, they know I don't believe in hell. Like, I've been very clear with them on that fact before. So I don't know why they. I mean, obviously, this is kind of directed a little bit in my direction because they're like, well, if you don't believe in hell, you really don't love people anymore. I think maybe that's why I'm thinking about it so much. But I really like Jason, right? Yeah, Jason. I really like what you said as well, Jason. That you really don't need to prove them wrong because there's no amount of like convincing. I'm not going to theologically convince them that they're wrong because they really don't use logic in the same way that you or John are using it. Like it's more of a it is all theology for them. It's it's all
mind
based off of that.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, Jason?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to ask, I don't know if you'd be willing to tell, but is there like what denomination of Christianity are your relatives?
We're all some sort of like amalgamation of like Baptist, evangelical, some Lutheran thrown in there for fun. Like, I went to a lot of different churches. Most of my friends and I have multiple church backgrounds. So
yeah. Well, so the basic, but it's basically just like Protestanty, right?
Yeah, not Catholic and definitely evangelical for sure.
Okay. I keep going back to this, but the question that I always want to ask and know is that like one of the key selling points for evangelical Christianity, especially, is this whole idea that there's no way you can be too far gone to be forgiven by Jesus, right? And I feel like the ramifications of that is that you, like whatever moral actions you commit as far as what you do in your life, that doesn't matter because as long as you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you're getting into heaven. And so like for me, it feels way more loving or like you're a good person to care more about how your actions affect people around you and affect the community that you live in, the society that you live in. Like I feel like making sure your actions are not contributing a net negative to all that, and rather being a positive influence. I feel like that's more indicative of showing love, being a good person and everything like that, rather than just, saying, oh yeah, I believe in Jesus. Like that doesn't mean you're a good person. That doesn't mean anything. That means that you have one particular belief and that's it. Like you believe in Jesus. Oh, well, whoop-de-doo. Like, but you kind of, you did do some bad stuff. It's like, oh, well, that doesn't matter because I believe in Jesus now. and he's forgiven me for all that. So, you get all the time how people will compare, this justice of God to like a courtroom, and they try to explain Jesus' sacrifice in that way. And it always baffles me because it's like, if there were any courtroom that ran its justice system like the Bible has it, where you could just say, oh, well, I believe in Jesus, and you get off scot-free, and you get to go about your life or whatever, your eternity, I guess, in this situation. Like, how is that justice? Like, I don't see any justice in that, which I know is straying way off from what your original question was. But was there anything else that you kind of wanted to talk about tonight, or is that it?
I mean, that's the main thing. But just to piggyback off what you're saying, I think I've had that conversation with each of them, and I regularly say that exact thing. It's like, and it's in their own Bible, and I don't even try to use I'm not out with them. I'm just like, I don't believe in hell. I don't believe a lot of these things. Like, oh, you're just deconstructing. But they're basically like, I basically come at them with like, so do you actually believe that Matthew 25 is a conversation you're going to have with Jesus someday, or do you just think that's a metaphor? Because if you think that's an actual conversation you're going to have with Jesus one day, I think that your entire philosophy that you just say a prayer and you're saved is bullshit, right? So, like essentially, I don't think that they have a leg to stand on even within their own religion, but I don't think I'm ever going to convince them of that. Other than, I think what you said, Jason, is really powerful, and I definitely will keep that in mind. And John, yeah, definitely thank you for your thoughts. Appreciate both of you very much.
No, yeah, thank you for calling in there, Robert. And I totally agree with what Jason said too. Like, there's no way that you're gonna be able to change their mind. Me personally, I always like to push back just a little bit because you never know when something's gonna click. But I think actively trying to change their mind, I wouldn't do that either, or at least not expect any kind of movement. And depending on how set in their ways they are, it may never happen. So, yeah, I think that was great advice there, Jason.
Thank you.
But anyways, Robert, I hope you have a great night and a great week, and I guess we will see you later. Okay.
Thanks again. Bye.
All right. Bye. All right. Well, that was pretty interesting. We do still have lines open, but if you don't want to call in, but you still have questions for us, either on God's existence, morality, Christian theology, any of that kind of stuff. Sorry. You can send in a super chat and ask us, and we will interact with those. We've already got a couple, so we will be heading to super chats. Any super chat over $5, we will be addressing directly. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask us, but don't want to call in or anything like that, that's perfectly fine. But sending in a super chat would definitely help us out here. Otherwise, we'll have to sell the show to Connor, and it will be the last 5 seconds of his call just all the time. And it will we'll probably stay up about 5 seconds or something. I don't know. But we'll have to do that unless you send in a super chat. It's my birthday this month. I was going to do a show near my birthday. So if you want to send in birthday wishes, a $5 birthday wish would be actually pretty great. I'm turning 39, and so I'm old as fuck now. Nearly being 40. Sorry, Jason, I don't know how old you are. I don't want to demean you. I'm just demeaning myself because, every time I get up out of the chair, it's like snap, crackle, pop, fireworks and shit. But
yeah, you can't stand up without the sound effects.
I mean, that's how it sounds. Like every time it's like I'm just extra crispy. So Jason, the other day I saw this video on YouTube where somebody said that they had mathematical proof that God exists, and that mathematical
they're
proof
using
was
math now.
Yeah, they're using math, and the math was that basically infinite numbers can exist in math, right? It's a concept. And therefore, the only thing that can be infinite is God. And so therefore, God exists because infinite number sets exist or something.
Of course, you picked the video that I'm covering on the Sometime Show tomorrow. God damn it, John.
Oh,
spoilers! No, I'm just kidding. Do whatever you want.
I'm going to need an infinite amount of painkillers to deal with that.
Yeah.
It's the universe is finite, therefore it cannot contain any infinities. But pizzas are circle, which means their areas are determined by pi, which means that they contain an infinity. Therefore, pizzas are God because pizzas can contain infinites. I like it.
Yeah.
There we go.
But technically, infinite sets exist for any between any 2 points, like in space time. So, I mean, everything's God. I guess maybe that works too much in their favor. Everything being God, because everything can have an infinite set in it.
Well, I'm convinced, so I'm gonna have to get out of here, guys, and get ready for church.
Yeah, you got to go out there and huff some pure Bible. Freebase it.
Yeah. And you know what? We got, like, okay, if God, like, numbers prove God, and the Bible is full of numbers, like every chapter and every verse and every page is numbered, man, it's everywhere. It's got to be true then.
It's just funny how condescending the guy is too, where he's just like, and so this is the obvious. And literally just offering some of the stupidest proofs that have ever been, really. Not to mention, like, even if you think that this is where the proof God is, and I've been bringing this up more recently with different topics, but even if you think that this is the proof, how recently was math accessible to most people? Because if you think this is the proof, you basically believe in a proof that most people have not had access to who believed in God so far. So you think that everybody before this has been irrational in their belief in God, but you figured it out because infinite numbers exist.
I just love these arguments, you know, like the Grand Canyon is beautiful, you know, or DNA is really complicated, or numbers. There's a shitload of them. Like, these are some fantastic arguments, and I just, you know, I can't refute it, because there is a shitload of numbers. So it's got to be real, I guess. You know,
There was
how
a
do you
guy-
deal with that?
There was a guy who called in saying that infinite numbers are actually proof of Satan. He called him once. Sometimes I wonder if it's the same guy who made the video, but that 2/3 is Satan's obvious number because 2/3 equals 666. And then I was like, no, it doesn't. It equals 666666666, repeating. And then I asked him what God's number was, and he said 1. And I was like, but 1 is also 9 repeating. So God is also Satan because it's an infinite number that can never be solved. You're fucked.
Infinite number of the beast. I like it. And, you know, as far as Satan, you know, like, that fucker invented algebra. You know, we got all these numbers, and let's just start throwing the alphabet in there. You know, oh yeah, okay. The numbers prove
Satan's
Satan,
a dick.
not Yahweh, though.
Someone's going to accuse you of Islamophobia for that one. Because Muslims invented algebra.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit. I didn't even make that connection. We do have another caller, our last caller, actually. This is Max. Hey there, Max. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah, I've been listening to you guys, and you're so knowledgeable about the Bible that I want to get your opinions on this. I've listened to a lot of these shows, and I hear, you know, I know that the core tenet for a lot of Christians is the idea that, you know, Jesus rose from the dead, and they seem, and then when people say, oh, well, you know, maybe people who wrote the Gospels lied about it, or that it was all hallucination, and they seem, you know, I think a lot of Christians are put off by that. So, you know, I'm interested in other theories that could be presented to them. Not to say that any one is correct, and also I'd be curious to think what you guys just, none of us can go back in time, but which one you guys think would be correct. But like, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I thought the idea that, Jesus, he was crucified, and normally when you're crucified, you stay on the cross for several days. I mean, actually, for many days. A lot of times they want to have you up there, but because it was Passover, they, according to the story, it was Passover, so they took him down early. He was only up for 6 hours. It's very possible that he could have feigned death. But I later found out that I wasn't the first person to think of this. Obviously, it's called the swoon theory, apparently. But just the idea that something like that could be a possibility, especially if you look at the gospel according to Mark. I think you guys were saying that Mark was the original one as far as those gospels go. It conforms more closely to that possibility, because he could have just passed out and woken up, in the grave, and he's on his way. But there's also, of course, I've been researching it over the past couple of weeks now. Like Pelagia has the legend theory, and then there's mythicists and so on. So, but you guys have a lot more knowledge about the Bible than I do. So I'm curious, what your opinions on all this are, from a historical perspective, a theoretical historical perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
Jason, what are your thoughts about where the story of the resurrection comes from?
Okay, so let's say that the man existed and he got himself into some kind of trouble, with the Jews or with the Romans or both, and he is killed. And different sources say different things. Maybe he was stoned to death. Maybe he was crucified. Whatever, doesn't matter. He gets killed. He gets tossed into a hole in the ground. We have to remember that the author of Mark, or any of the gospel authors, these are not eyewitnesses, and they're not basing their accounts on eyewitness accounts. They're writing literature. These are creative authors. They are carefully constructing and outlining these narratives, and they're borrowing heavily from other myths, including, Greek literature. So, we're talking about people who were steeped in other nearby religions and mythologies that include dying and rising figures. The Mediterranean world is rife with these stories. Every culture over there had a half dozen deities and heroes that died and came back from the dead. The god Baal that was worshipped in that region, he's vilified in the Bible, but he died and rose again, and he had this whole battle with death and all this other stuff. A lot of stories and a lot of details about the god Baal mirror those of Jesus. Now, that isn't to say that Jesus is just a reworking of the god Baal, but it shows that these people, they knew about these stories, and these are powerful stories. These deists. These deity and folk heroes who die, and then they come back from the dead, and they appeal to the people, and their death is a symbol of rebirth and life, and it renews all of this, and it restores hope, and it defeats death and darkness and all this other stuff. This was very common in not just the area, but also in mystery religions, which Christianity was a Jewish mystery religion. So let's say the guy was a real person and he died. Do you think that would stop his followers from, turning him into a rising folk hero who came back from the dead? I mean, they literally did this like almost 2 centuries earlier with Judas Maccabeus. In the book of Enoch, there's this one section, it's called the Animal Apocalypse. Fantastic name for a metal band. This guy, Judas Maccabeus, he comes in and he's a great hero to the Jews, and he's going to rebel against the invaders and all this other stuff. And then he's betrayed by some of his own people. Eventually he dies. But there's this prophecy about how he's going to come back from the dead and he's going to finish what he started and restore all this. He also went on, he purified the temple. He like got rid of all the wickedness in there, and he cleansed it. And he tears this thing down and he rebuilds it. Like, this stuff parallels the Jesus story so well that when Enoch was like rediscovered by the Western world, Christians started pointing their fingers at this passage, this section of the story, and they were like, "Look, it's Jesus! It's Jesus!" And it's like, so dying and rising folk heroes and stuff. Like, this was a thing, It's so. Yeah, you got a guy who's popular and he dies. His followers, can be like, yeah, he totally came back from the dead and he's who we follow, and he rose up into heaven, and 5,000 people saw it, or 500, however, it was a bunch of them. It was an infinite number. And so, like, they can say anything, and they did. They just made stories up. Look at the opening chapters of Matthew and Luke. They are completely contradictory stories set at least a decade apart that detail how Jesus was born. They're traveling in the opposite directions and for different reasons, and, during the time of Herod or the census of Quirinius and all these different things. And they literally just made it up, So, yeah, why can't they just make up the guy coming back from the dead? Especially since that was the thing that was popular in Greek literature. Grave robbers showing up and they get into the tomb and, oh crap, the guy's alive. That was a thing, so yeah. And they were full of dying and rising gods. There's even evidence that Yahweh died in his battle with Leviathan and was erupted out of his side 3 days later. So yeah, it's a story.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I agree definitely with the ideas of stories. And what I wonder, though, is, like, I think typically when you say something like that to a Christian, and I think it's, of course, that's helpful to give them that context that there's a lot of these made-up stories. This is just another one. But in their minds, they're so fixated on the details of the gospel, and so they want to, like, wonder, like, so did Paul, or did Peter, did Peter, who actually... did Peter just make it all up? Is he a flat out liar? And that's just incomprehensible to them. So maybe, so then there's all these other theories. Did Peter have just a death? When people die, a lot of times people hallucinate someone they love, they see them. So then there's that theory. And then there's the theory that, that Peter may have told the actual story, but then someone else added to it, because there were like 30 years of oral tradition, and then someone else added a little bit to it, and then someone else added to it, and then Peter wasn't there to correct them, or then the far out one. But I think I just kind of think it's kind of cool, the idea that Jesus was only on the cross for 6 hours, and if I were him, I would have played dead, if it were me, and and he gets thrown into an open grave, or any kind of grave, even if it, and then he just kind of like. That would explain how the apostles. He saw the apostles. He's like, "Hey guys, I'm here, but I'll see you guys later. Let's give me some food, and I'll head out somewhere else." And but I know that's a little far fetched. But
but I guess first, hold on. Go ahead. So the first thing that I have to ask is, how do you even know that Jesus was crucified in the first place to have to swoon? And this is a question that I asked Bart Ehrman directly. And he had his own answers for it, but I feel like that's kind of where you have to start, is like, what evidence do we have?
Right. So, the approach I'm taking is I'm looking at, okay, so we've got here, one option is a miracle happened, something that's never happened in the history of humanity. And then the other option is something that's relatively normal. Some guy is a troublemaker, goes into the temple, turns over all the money changer stuff. It's as if you went into a bank and started a riot, and then they say, okay, we'll crucify this guy. I mean, that's something that typically happens. Oh, and he was a charismatic leader, cult leader. Like we have cult leaders. He's the quintessential cult leader. He's a typical cult leader who has miracles and quotes.
Max,
Yeah.
I mean, you gave us those two options, like something normal. Are you including like it just didn't happen in normal? Like, I mean, I feel like that's a pretty normal thing, but I just don't know if you're including it.
Yeah. I would definitely include didn't happen. The mythicist, I guess, approach where Jesus didn't exist at all. But I think if you went to a Christian and said that, they would it's just such a stretch for them to consider that. They'd be like, "You're crazy." There's obviously
I'm not suggesting I'm not suggesting that you use like Jesus not existing as like nothing that we've said here.
But it is a viable option. I agree.
Jesus. Well, I mean, yeah, but that's not what I was talking about. Like what I'm talking about, because like there could have been some fuck that walked around Judea, right, gathered followers or whatever, and the later apostles, they foisted stories upon this dude, and one of those stories is about this suffering and dying Messiah. So, I mean, I'm definitely not suggesting use Jesus didn't exist as a reason why it didn't happen. I usually try to come at it from the evidence. So it's like, well, what evidence do we have that Jesus was crucified in the first place? The only person that we have independent testimony from is Paul. And Paul, I don't know if you know where Paul gets his information from.
And Paul never met Jesus, right?
Well, Paul never met Jesus.
I mean,
but
he had a vision.
He had a vision, and he also read the scriptures. So then the question becomes, well, can we find this information in the scriptures and in the Jewish community? Like, can we find the Jewish community creating peshers, which is taking snippets of scripture and reinterpreting it to reveal information about the Messiah, right? That's what in this particular context, that's what a pesherim was. And so what Jews were doing were they were reinterpreting their Old Testament, their scriptures, not Old Testament, but their scriptures. They were reinterpreting them to reveal information about this Messiah, right? And what a section of them that would eventually end up becoming the Christians came to understand was that like Isaiah 52 and 53, the suffering servant has God's servant being this Messiah figure to suffer and die. You also have evidence of this in the wisdom of Solomon, having a suffering and dying Messiah figure. And so sorry, I'm just coming up with this as I'm going. And you also have like Dead Sea Scrolls Jews, that community, they came up with a suffering and dying Messiah motif to explain why Onias III died, because he was viewed as being a Messiah or the Messiah. And so they had to explain why he was killed. And so they came up with this interpretation of the suffering servant and everything like that. And piggybacking off of what Jason said, all of this is compounding on the surrounding religions in the area, the mystery religions that have these dying and rising savior figures at the center of it. So I think that the whole idea that Jesus could have, like the crucifixion could have been fabricated, is far more likely than Jesus swooning out of it or anything like that, because there are a lot of problems with the swoon theory. One of the problems is that if Jesus did show himself afterwards to people like the Gospels say, the Romans would have been incredibly pissed, and they would have went and killed everybody that was associated with him. I mean, they would have taken it very seriously and made sure that everybody knew that he was fucking dead if that were to have happened. But of course we don't get that. So the swoon theory, while more possible or plausible than magical Jew resurrection, it's still, I feel, the least likely situation to come about.
Yeah, and we also have to remember that it's infinitely easier to just say that it happened,
make up a story,
than to find an example of a person surviving a means of execution. I mean, you can literally just pick any dead person and come around a generation
Elvis.
later and be like, yeah, they were running. Yeah, we still got people saying Elvis is alive. Him and JFK are out at a nursing home playing golf together. I saw it on Bubba
you could
Hotep.
also
It's a
imagine
documentary.
situation. Yeah, you could also imagine like with David Koresh, and I guess with the Waco thing, you can imagine that some of his followers, like imagine him going up in a flame of smoke up to heaven or whatever, and then 100 years from now, there's a resurrection story about David Koresh, even or something like that, where these cult,
Actually, that already
cult
exists.
followers and such.
There are
you kidding?
remnants of his following that,
outstanding.
along with
Hilarious,
conspiracy theorists, say that he wasn't actually present when the whole thing went down. That's already a thing that is floating around. David Koresh escaped. Yeah. So see, like, it's literally that easy. That literally happened within our own lifetimes. Okay. So yeah, you don't have to have anything extraordinary or miraculous happen. You don't have to have people seeing someone after they supposedly died. You'd literally just have to have someone who wants them to be alive for whatever reason start claiming that they are, and that's literally it. That's literally all it takes. And then you have a story in which they exist. And then if people want to believe it for whatever reason, then, especially since, that is linked in with their salvation of their immortal soul and all the rest, which is a really compelling reason to believe it, then people are going to believe it. And Christianity isn't unique in that. This happened with the cult of Inanna long before Christianity. There's a list of things, so yeah, it's a pretty weak argument, and there's really no mystery in it at all. In my opinion, it just, people can write stuff in fiction novels, and you don't have to try to explain where an idea in a fiction novel came from. You could just say that the author wrote it.
Or a classic
That's
fish story. A fish story retold 100 times. The fish gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it's a whale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, I just wanted to flesh this out with somebody, and you guys are experts on it, so I want to hear what your thoughts are, and that all makes perfect sense.
Yeah, glad we could help.
Well, just to be clear, I don't consider myself an expert. I mean, I've casually sort of researched this for my own purposes and everything like that. So I mean, I'm knowledgeable in the area, I would say, but I'm not. I just don't want people out there being like, he claims to be an expert in biblical history and all this other kind of shit. So I'm knowledgeable.
But still, you present a great perspective, though.
I appreciate that. There's a lot of people that would treat it as like crank to even question whether or not Jesus was crucified. I mean, when I talked to Bart Ehrman, that was the feeling that I got from him, which basically Bart Ehrman's reason for thinking that the crucifixion actually happened was just, who would make this up? Like, that's like, Jews wouldn't have fabricated this, so it had to happen. And like,
yeah, well, who would make up the story about Elvis, and who would make up the story about David Koresh?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Just because you can't imagine it, that's just a lack of imagination.
Now, and just to argue, just to be somewhat argumentative, or just to make the conversation interesting, to argue in favor of Bart Ehrman, again, he'd probably argue that someone being crucified is not an extraordinary event. In the same way, David Koresh being killed in Waco, Texas, is not an extraordinary event. But so that's not such a far-fetched thing that it's easy to accept someone can be crucified. Rising from the dead, now that's a whole nother story. We're in crazy town here.
We're gonna need to jump to super chats here in a second, but I don't see the value in saying, oh, the crucifixion's not all that fantastical. Like, I get it, it's not all that fantastical of a claim, but I still feel like if you're going to make the claim, then you should probably have evidence in order to make
not a percent evidence,
claim.
right?
Like, yeah. I mean,
Right.
I
But
feel like that's the best way to argue for anything is to present the evidence in a well-reasoned argument for why it had to have happened. And I feel like, oh, they wouldn't have made this shit up is like, it compounds on itself as far as the problems that it introduces. You can say
yeah,
your final thoughts and everything like that, there, Max, but we do need to jump to super chats.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's great to get you guys' perspective, and yeah, thanks a lot. That was awesome talking to you. Have a great night.
All right. Hey, you have a great night too. And I hope you'll call in again.
All right, thank you.
All right. See you later, Max. Right. All of the calls tonight. That's it's been awesome. We do have a few super chats to address. If we've touched on a topic that you disagree with us on, or you want to get our perspective on, considering sending in a super chat. Otherwise, Connor will own the channel, and I don't think that's a joke. But in any case, I think we're going to head to the super chats now. There we go. All right. So first super chat is from Mario Chartrand for 10 imaginary Canadian dollars. Anyone suffering from religion is akin to quotos, but at least the fish people are able to summon their deity. I don't know what a quoto is, but I hope I didn't just throw a ethnic slur out there.
We've had too many of
maybe it's
those
like
on this
those-
episode already.
I know.
Yeah, but the instant someone
I'm
says
so sorry
fish
about that,
people,
Jimmy.
I
I'm probably
start
fired
thinking
now.
the instant someone starts saying fish people, I start thinking of H.P. Lovecraft and The Shadow over Innsmouth. So yeah, there could be like some weird fish hybrids out there trying to summon up Dagon or something. I don't know. I'm not familiar with them being called this, so I don't know.
So I my mind actually went two places. It's Hellboy with Abraham in Hellboy, and then a similar figure in what was it? It's like the Sound of Water or Color of Water or something like that. I think it was a Guillermo del Toro.
The Shape of Water.
Shape of Water.
When she fucked the fish?
The Shape of Water.
Yeah.
Yeah, she fucked the fish.
That's how you get mermaids.
Yeah. And then $10 from Sid Thames. Thank you so much. I don't know if I pronounced the last name right, but thank you, Sid. You're awesome.
I think that isn't that pronounced Thames? Isn't that how that word is? But also the photo looks, I'm getting like uncanny valley. It could just be a person who's, I don't know, got a well-finished photo, but it looks like an AI photo also. Does anyone else get that vibe?
I mean, it definitely looks, it looks like a professional photo. So, I mean, the face, the eyes are in the correct locations and everything. So it's probably not AI.
Oh my God. You don't know.
Kind of looks like
you don't know about
the
AI.
Season of, what is it? American Horror Story. Season 1. The girl on there kind of looked like that.
I'm going to take you on some tours of some AI services here soon. We got to get into big screen like we've been talking about. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you some shit that's going to blow your mind and confuse your penis.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have some time for that soon. I promise.
I showed three different people AI tools I use for YouTubing stuff, and literally all three of them are changing their workflows because of it, because it's that good of shit. You gonna see.
Oh, wow.
And I'm gonna show you.
Okay. I'm here for it. Jason, do you want to read this one?
I don't know how to read. I haven't learned that yet.
I
hey
think
John,
he's
great
serious.
show. Sadly, Connor isn't that much. Hang on, now I lost my place. Sadly, Connor isn't that much below standard apologetics. Also, a man closing in on 40. Brother, I feel ya. I miss cartilage.
I miss cartilage too. Every morning it escapes my body and it's very loud about it. Sorry, Jimmy, what were you saying?
Who cares? I don't know. Something.
Okay. $20 from Joshua Owens. What do you all think of the Elhanan controversy or the Elephantine Jewish community? I'm not knowledgeable about this. Do you know what it's talking about there, Jason?
The first one, not so much. But Elephantine, I've also heard it pronounced Elephantini. This was this outpost in southern Egypt. It's like an island in the middle of the Nile, and there was this thriving Jewish community there for several centuries, and they discovered like a whole bunch of writings from these people. And I think this is a group that like their whole thing kind of like was abandoned or whatever, maybe around year 700 or thereabouts. So we're talking about this community that's contemporary with the first temple, and they were like, they had letters and stuff. They had correspondence with the temple in Jerusalem, so they're on good speaking terms. They've got correspondence going back and forth, and so we've got like a contemporary, like a first century contemporary Jewish temple with a community in good standing with Jerusalem. So this gives us a pretty good glimpse into the workings of Jewish theology during this time period. And they've got really cool stuff. Like Yahweh has a wife named Anat, who was like this total badass chick. She had like some scimitars and she would like chop people up and stuff. There's some really cool stories about her that were discovered in Syria, in a city called Ugarit. There's like a bunch of really weird stuff that was discovered there, including a complete absence of figures such as Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Moses. And not only that, like a lot of those names didn't even appear in their records. I don't mean like in their stories about, the origins of their religion. I mean like people in the community didn't even have those names. So it's like, these are names that seem to have popped up later, like in the Second Temple period. Like the Jews didn't even have those names. So it's really fascinating stuff. I'm trying to get my hands on like a big collection of the documents from there so I can read them more thoroughly, because it's really interesting stuff that they've found there. And it shows that like our understanding of First Temple theology is like way off base, because they had a very different idea about religion than what we consider, from like reading the Old Testament.
Are either of you familiar much with King David mythicism? Not that he didn't exist, but that much of his story is actually stolen from other people?
A little bit, yeah.
Hadn't heard of that. Okay.
Yeah, basically the idea is that I just say the idea is that a lot of the things that are attributed to him, kind of like Napoleon, that he has these mythical things about him that have been taken from other people. So the Elhanan controversy is potentially one of those that people point to in the Old Testament because of
that's the one who killed Goliath.
And that Elhanan, right? Elhanan may be the person who actually killed Goliath as opposed to David.
Okay, that rings a bell. Yeah, it pops up, I believe, in like 2 Samuel. There's this whole big battle with the Philistines, and they've got like these big giants and stuff. And at this point, like David is like really old, and one of his lieutenants is this guy named Elhanan, and he shows up and he kills Goliath. And it looks like they took that story and they moved it up, earlier in the life of David, and they're like, oh yeah, so David killed Goliath, but we've got this other version of the story in which one of his like lieutenants, who I think is only mentioned in that one passage, is the guy who kills him. And that's a classic example of the biblical editors including multiple versions of the same story. Like you have, like in the stories of Abraham and Isaac, you have 3 different times when a patriarch goes into another country and like pimps his wife by claiming that it's actually his sister because she's so beautiful the king's going to try to take her. And if the king knows that, you know, she's married, then the patriarch will get killed. So it's like, oh no, I'll just like, you know, sell her to you because like she's my sister. Like Abraham does it in Egypt, and then again in Gerar with King Abimelech, and then Isaac comes along and does the exact same thing in Gerar with the same King Abimelech. It's 3 different versions of the same story, and they just have variations on the details. So yeah, that's I think that's what that is.
Yeah, the Christian apologetic is that Elhanan actually killed Goliath's brother, but that's also derived of things that don't make much sense. Anyway, that's all I think.
Rabbinical authors tried, like they made that argument many, many centuries ago. And there's, I think they may have, it pops up in some of the Jewish writings. I don't remember which ones, but they're like, oh, it's actually Goliath's brother. They're trying to fix the contradiction.
I think it's your turn to read there, Jason.
Monkey had a typewriter, who's the one that did the previous one I read. Also, Jimmy, it would be unethical to post Connor's number. It would also be unethical to write it on the walls of barroom urinals around the state. So, Jimmy, don't do that.
I'm going to track down his mom.
Yeah, his number is 867-5309.
Let's see, our next super chat's $10 from Larry Fishman, I think is how you pronounce that. Elvis is not dead. He just went home. Sorry, I tried to do my best Tommy Lee there. I'm not good at doing voices. I can only do, drunk hillbilly.
$5 from Sonic Shroom. The probability of the Jesus story being true equals 1 divided by the amount of people who could have made it up. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, that is a lot of people. But I also feel like it's more about the community at the time, because interestingly enough, there are like if you look at the Gnostic the Nag Hammadi library and the Kerman, I don't know how to pronounce that right now, but all of the Dead Sea Scrolls and everything like that, or not Dead Sea Scrolls, sorry, but the Nag Hammadi library. If you look at that, you've actually got like several different versions of Christianity. Although my favorite version of Christianity is one that Bart Ehrman illuminated in one of his books. I can't remember which one it is right now. But he talks about how it only exists. We only know about it because other people wrote about it. And it's basically this sect of Christians that told a story about Jesus, how he took Mary Magdalene up on a cliff, up on a mountain, and he then in front of Mary Magdalene pulled a freshly like made woman out of his side, right? Grapes her right in front of Mary. But after he, concludes, he reaches into the newly formed woman and pulls out his ejaculate, and then looks Mary dead in the face and is like, do this, something along the lines of do this in remembrance of me, or we do this to remember something or another. And it's like the weirdest fucking story that could exist, I feel, like one of them. And it's just so odd. And so there's an amalgam of different ideas about who the Messiah was, and we just simply don't know like all the different versions of it. But it's almost like the MCU right now, just this multiverse of different kinds of Jesuses doing weird shit.
I'd pay to watch that.
That
Hey,
particular one.
Oh, go on. No, after you.
Yeah, like I remember reading about that one. I think the book you're referring to is Lost Christianities, but I'm not positive. But I did read about that in like a translation of like the original text. Like there was this Christian guy he was like writing about all these different kinds of Christianity all over the Mediterranean world. I believe this one was in Egypt, but I'm not positive, or maybe he was in Egypt. Anyway, he's talking about all these different types of Christianity that are out there and what he thinks is wrong with them, and that was one of them. It is like I think they would also like they would like reenact this in like these bizarre like cult orgies, you know, and it was like this bizarre communion ritual. And like this was one of the types of Christianity that existed, and you know, they had foundation in scripture, just like all of the others. So yeah, it's like what we see as Christianity is just like, you know, this long series of evolution from these different, you know, tidbits that survived and were collated together and all the rest. I mean, we've got 4 different gospels and no 2 tell the same story. So yeah, it's really weird stuff.
So I have a gift for the two of you, because we're talking about myths and the Bible and all that kind of stuff. I went to one of my favorite AIs of choice, because we brought up AI, and I asked for a picture of Bigfoot reading the Bible to a unicorn on a tire swing. Now, granted, he's not on the tire swing, but this got made in like 10 seconds, and I will have you notice, John, he's got all of his fingers, John. Or wait, what was your thing? The eyes are wrong? His eyes are fine, John.
Hey, I mean, I haven't worked a lot with
calendar stone in the tree.
Yeah, also, that's clearly not the Bible. But look, this is, I made this in like 12 seconds.
No, I agree. I mean, that looks pretty awesome, and I feel like I want that picture to make a meme out of it for my Facebook page. But
I'll send it.
You'll have to show me. Like, yeah, I mean, I tried to figure out Midjourney, but I just didn't have enough time to dedicate to figure out how to get that to work.
Do you have ChatGPT Pro?
I don't have Pro, no.
Because I love Midjourney also, but the Pro, you can now use the DALL-E plugin, so you can literally like talk to ChatGPT about all the things you want, and then when you want to make a change, it's like easy. Because I had given a different prompt, and it didn't come out quite with what I wanted. Actually, I can show you what it came out with. It came out with this, and so I was like, "Can Bigfoot be reading the Bible to the unicorn?" And then it was like, "Sure, it can."
Hold on. Go back. What the fuck is hanging between Bigfoot's legs? Like, that's like a dislocated
that swing,
like,
it's a fantasy world. Swings work differently, and you have to put a counterweight on your taint is all.
Yeah. Yep. That's what it is. All right. We got $10 from the Raven 200, who says, my favorite part of the Bible is when Kratos uses the blade of Olympus on Kronos too. Oh, wait, that's God of War 3. Jimmy, go take a Samoan spike from the solo Sekola and a bonsai drop from Rikishi. I don't know what any of those words mean, but I think it's something about go fuck yourself.
Lost. We got $10 from Foux to Fallacies. Thanks, guys. Happy birthday, and keep up the great work.
You know, it's gonna be a happy birthday this year. I mean, I'm limited on what I can eat right now, and I will be limited on my birthday. But y'all, I don't know if y'all be surprised to know this, but this year my birthday is on Thanksgiving, and so like we call it Johnsgiving. here, and I'm gonna have the best pureed shit that I can eat right now.
Get some turkey.
I thought
soup.
John's giving was
with
what
all these
happened.
Oh,
There's only a few more. I thought John's giving was what happens when we hang out, but never mind.
I think you're up this time.
Yes, I'm up. Sorry, totally blanked. $10 from Entangled Loam, who says, appreciate your work, dudes. Love the Bible Hub shirt back there. So sorry that POS called in to use slurs instead of defending their terrible beliefs. Learning the new Jimmy meta. Is it go Jimmy yourself now? I think it is go Jimmy yourself, right?
That is what has caught on lately, yes.
Okay. Ooh,
$10
Jason
from
can pronounce this name.
Sid Timms. I'm going to say Timms. I think it's British, and maybe that's where Jim came from. They're trying to say James. I don't know. It's Tessa Farmiga. Yeah, okay. American Horror Story. I got it right. That's the actress from season 1. I think she's in some other seasons too, but yeah.
Yeah, well, she's also in the new Nun movie, as well as the previous Nun movie. I think she plays the nun, not the nun that's the ghosty nun, but the nun that the story's centered around. She's also Vera Farmiga's sister. I don't know if y'all know that. Vera Farmiga is big into the Conjuring universe that they're building or have built or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I know who you're talking about now.
Yeah. $4.99 from Poor Claire, who says, as soon as I heard GE giving an opinion about what he thought AI was like, I was like, oh God, here we go. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Well, okay, so yes, I have a limited experience with AI and generating like art and stuff, so I haven't really invested a lot of time into it, but I do remember that at one time I asked this one AI art generator to give me an angel bathed in light descending from the clouds, and it gave me a bare-chested woman looking into the sky, just letting her breasts hang out, and it's like, that's
so what was wrong with that?
Not what I asked for.
That was solving problems you didn't even know you had.
I do not know, Jimmy. I do not have any problems that would solve. Okay. The fact is that was not something I asked for.
I got 99 problems, but titties ain't 2.
And the time we were talking about that, Raven 200. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. In the time we were talking about that, I already have it, but I have to send it through. But I put the prompt that you just said you did into the one that I was using, and we'll send it through now to show you how good this one is. But there is no titties before anybody gets excited.
I mean...
So we got GE, those are wrestling moves. Solo Sokola is Rikishi's son. Jimmy, go take an Uso splash from Jimmy Uso and a crossroads from Cody Rhodes. I think that's English. Maybe. I'm not positive, though.
This is the one.
That's pretty.
Yeah. High res, too, so you could, like, zoom in if you wanted. You could crop it however you wanted. Let me get you a little zoomies in here. Okay,
Jimmy.
Going in on the face.
Oh,
that's
yeah,
not great.
that's a biblically accurate angel face.
But it's pretty good. You don't want to zoom too far. That's 5 times zoom. At this level, it's great.
It's great as long as you don't zoom in on the eyes, right, Jimmy?
You can ask it to render the eye. You can ask it to clean it up. It's just that's all you need.
Okay. She got that Picasso face kicking.
Also send me that over WhatsApp later. I could use
I'll
it.
send them all.
All right. Yeah, so apparently the Raven 200 wants a bunch of different wrestling moves. Sorry. So $9.99 from Peyton Dooley. Tried to watch the whole show, but ate way too much Taco Bell and had to go take a massive Connor. Oh shit! Yeah.
Wow.
Take a massive Connor. I like that. Also, I'm so jealous of people that can eat Taco Bell right now. Just so you know.
Things I didn't think I'd hear.
So yeah, I think that's is that all? I think that's all the super chats.
Morgan thinks we missed one of Raven's. Did we read this one? Yeah, we read this one.
We did.
I read those. Yeah.
Yeah, we got them. We got them all. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, tonight's been fun. I'm probably fired because I let a dude on twice that ended up causing issues, but so this may be my last show. I don't know. My fingers are crossed on that.
Depends on how our next John's Givings goes.
Oh yeah. Okay. It sounds good. But anyways, y'all have an awesome night. Don't forget to visit the Patreon and all of that. I want to say thank you so much to all of the chat moderators as well as our call screener. Sorry, I totally forgot to look to see who the call screener was tonight. I'm such a bad host right now.
Flabbergasted.
Horrible. It's the old age.
They're called flabbergasted.
Yeah, I mean,
thank you, flabbergasted. The screener was flabbergasted.
Oh yeah, the screener was flabbergasted.
That's the username. Anyways, I'm trying to tell you that's what they're called. Their username. That's what we use. Yeah.
Flabbergasted. Oh, I'm so sorry. Flabbergasted's the name. I'm such a dipshit. Thank you so much, Flabbergasted, for being the call screener. And I guess that we will see you heathens tomorrow. We get the Sometimes show over on Jimmy's channel, and then tomorrow night we've got Dying Out Loud. So we'll see all of you heathens then. Don't forget to stand up, use your voice, and all that kind of good shit. Bye, everybody.
Usually you can still be saying stuff. Like, go find the links for the guest tonight in the description. His name is Jason. He's cool. This was fun. What kind of glass was that, Jason?
Thundercats.
Cool. Well, that's the best thing to end on.